Lieutenant Hanson stood at attention in his crisp Navy SEAL uniform, watching the massive alien ship descend from the clouds above Washington, D.C. The ship's silver surface gleamed in the morning sun, stretching longer than 3 football fields. Around him, other military officers shifted nervously, but Han remained still, his face calm despite the historic moment unfolding before them. "They're here," General Roberts whispered beside him. Earth's first official contact with alien life. The ship landed softly on the wide lawn before the White House, hardly disturbing the grass beneath it. A door opened in its side, releasing a soft hiss of air. 3 tall figures emerged, their bodies covered in sleek armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Han studied them carefully. His SEAL training had taught him to notice details others might miss. The aliens moved with a strange grace, but their steps showed they were used to lower gravity. Their heads turned smoothly as they looked around, taking in the crowd of Earth's military and political leaders. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Commander Krill of the Galactic Federation." His voice came through a translator device, sounding almost human. "We have come to welcome Earth into our community of advanced civilizations." The president stepped forward to greet them, but Han's attention was fixed on the alien soldiers flanking Commander Krill. Their hands never strayed far from their weapons, advanced energy rifles that made Earth's best guns look like toys. Yet their stance was relaxed, almost careless. They didn't see any threats here. Commander Krill's next words confirmed Han's observation. "We understand your military forces still rely on primitive projectile weapons." He glanced at the ceremonial rifles some officers carried. "The Federation can offer Earth protection from more aggressive species. In return, we only ask for some of your planet's resources." Han felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face neutral. 20 years in the SEALs had taught him when to speak and when to watch and wait. "Perhaps a demonstration," Commander Krill suggested. He nodded to one of his guards, who raised his rifle and fired at a target that appeared in the air. The energy beam hit with perfect accuracy, leaving no trace of the holographic target. Murmurs of amazement spread through the crowd. Han noticed the slight smirk on Commander Krill's face. "Impressive," General Roberts said diplomatically. "But Earth's forces have their own capabilities." Commander Krill's translator made a sound like a laugh. "Yes, we've studied your military. Your best soldiers. These Navy SEALs and other special forces, still trained by running on beaches and swimming in oceans. In an age of space travel, you cling to physical conditioning as if it matters." Han's dark eyes met Commander Krill's gaze. The alien held it for a moment, then looked away dismissively. "The Federation's soldiers train in virtual environments," Commander Krill continued. "They master advanced weapons and tactics without risking injury. Physical training is obsolete." The alien commander went on to discuss trade agreements and diplomatic relations, but Han had heard enough. He understood now why he and other special forces operators had been invited to this meeting. Earth's leaders wanted them to see what they were up against. But Han saw something else. He saw overconfidence in the alien soldier's stance. He saw reliance on technology over instinct. He saw warriors who had never faced real fear or pain. As the meeting ended and the aliens returned to their ship, Han thought about his own training. He thought about Hell Week in BUD/S, about missions in the world's harshest environments, about the unbreakable bonds forged through shared suffering. He thought about the things that no virtual training could teach. Let them laugh, he decided. Soon enough, they would learn what Earth's special forces were really capable of. The alien ship rose into the sky, leaving Earth's leaders to discuss their next steps. But Han already knew what was coming. Sooner or later, the Federation would want to test Earth's military capabilities. And when that day came, he would be ready to show them why Navy SEALs were the best warriors in any galaxy. 2 weeks after first contact, Lieutenant Hanson sat in a briefing room at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The walls, usually covered in mission maps, now showed holographic displays of alien combat tactics. General Tox, the Federation's military liaison, stood at the front of the room, his tall figure casting a long shadow. "The Federation proposes a joint training exercise," General Tox announced, his translator making his voice sound metallic. "We wish to evaluate Earth's combat capabilities." The way he said evaluate made it clear he didn't expect much. Han looked at his team. Li Jin sat to his right, cleaning his sniper scope with careful movements. The marksman had once hit a target from 3 kilometers away during a storm. Next to him, Kim Da checked her medical kit, her quick fingers sorting through supplies she probably knew by touch alone. "Your weapons," General Tox pointed at their gear, "will be allowed in the exercise, though I don't see why you'd want to use them." He picked up one of their rifles, holding it like it was a museum piece. "Projectile weapons are so messy." Li Jin's hand stopped moving for a moment. Han saw the slight tightening around his eyes, the only sign that the insult had bothered him. "When do we start?" Han asked, keeping his voice neutral. General Tox pressed a button on his wrist, and a new hologram appeared. It showed a training course on Mars, where the Federation had built their main military base in the solar system. 3 days, the alien general said. "We'll transport your team in one of our ships. Try not to get sick. Human stomachs seem weak to space travel." After General Tox left, Han gathered his team. Besides Li Jin and Kim Da, he had chosen 3 other SEALs: Park Min, Yoon Ta, and Kang Ho. Each was the best at what they did, and more importantly, each knew how to think creatively. "They're going to throw everything at us," Han told his team. "All their fancy tech, their advanced weapons, their battle computers. They want to prove we're primitive." "Did you see their stance?" Li Jin spoke quietly, still cleaning his scope. "They stand like people who've never been shot at. Their armor makes them feel safe." Kim Da nodded. "Their medical tech is amazing, but they depend on it too much. They don't know basic field medicine. What happens when the tech fails?" "Exactly," Han said. "They train in virtual environments. Everything is clean, controlled, predictable. But real combat is messy," Park Min finished, grinning. The demolitions expert had seen enough chaos to know the difference between theory and reality. Yoon Ta, their communications specialist, raised a hand. "Their comms are encrypted, but they're also complex. Lots of channels, lots of chatter. In my experience, complex systems have more points of failure." "And their tactics." Han looked at Kang Ho, who had been studying the Federation's battle footage. "Textbook," Kang Ho said with a slight smile. "Literally textbook. They fight like they're following a manual. No improvisation, no surprises." Han stood up. "Then that's our advantage. We'll train like we always do, hard, fast, and ready for everything to go wrong. Because it will." The team spent the next 3 days preparing. While the Federation soldiers might laugh at them, running on beaches and swimming in cold waters, Han knew these basic drills built something technology couldn't replace: grit. On the morning of their departure, Han watched his team check their gear one last time. Their weapons might be primitive by Federation standards, but they were reliable. Their tactics might seem simple, but they were tested in real combat. Their training might look basic, but it had forged them into something the aliens hadn't counted on: warriors who could think and adapt. As they boarded the Federation transport ship, Han heard 2 alien soldiers talking through their translators. "Look at their gear. It's all manual. No AI assistance. No neural links. This will be the shortest training exercise ever. Almost feel bad for them." Han shared a look with his team. "Let them underestimate us," his eyes said. "That's always been humanity's greatest advantage." The red dust of Mars swirled around Han's boots as he stepped out of the Federation transport ship. The sky above was a pale pink, and 2 small moons hung like distant marbles. Despite the thin atmosphere outside, the Federation's protective dome made breathing easy. "Welcome to Camp Victory," General Tox said, spreading his arms wide. The base stretched out before them, full of gleaming buildings and training areas. Alien soldiers moved about in their powered armor, practicing with energy weapons that lit up the Martian morning. Li Jin adjusted the strap of his sniper rifle, drawing amused looks from nearby Federation troops. Their weapons were sleek and compact, making Earth guns look big and clumsy. "Your quarters are in Section D," General Tox pointed to a smaller building. "The main exercise begins tomorrow at dawn. Feel free to observe our troops training today. You might learn something useful." Han nodded politely and led his team to their quarters. Once inside, they quickly checked for listening devices, just as they would on any mission. Kimda found 3 and disabled them without destroying them. No need to let the aliens know they'd been discovered. "What do you see?" Han asked his team as they gathered around a simple table. "Their armor needs constant power," Yunta said first. "Saw the charging stations everywhere. They're never more than 100 meters apart." Kang Ho nodded. "And they rely on their heads-up displays for everything. Basic direction, target identification, even talking to each other. Take that away." "They're blind," Park Min finished. He had been watching the aliens practice with their energy weapons. "Those guns are powerful, but the targeting is all computer-assisted. Doubt any of them can shoot straight without it." Kimda opened her medical kit, arranging supplies. "The air processors in their armor are complex. One hit to the right spot could disrupt them. Not enough to kill, but enough to distract." Li Jin had been unusually quiet, staring out the window at the training fields. "The dust," he said finally. "Their sensors hate it. Saw them recalibrating every few minutes when the wind picked up." Han smiled. His team hadn't just been observing. They'd been hunting for weaknesses. It's what made them SEALs. While the Federation soldiers saw them as primitive, they were learning, adapting, planning. They spent the rest of the day watching the alien troops train. The Federation soldiers moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons blazing bright paths through training drones. Every move was precise, programmed, predictable. "Look at their feet," Han told his team quietly. "They trust their armor's stability systems completely. Never test their footing, never check their balance." As night fell on Mars, creating a spectacular sunset of deep reds and purples, the Federation soldiers retired to their barracks. Their powered armor went into charging stations, their weapons were stored in automated lockers, and their combat computers ran diagnostics. In their quarters, Han's team was doing things the old way. They cleaned their weapons by hand, checked their gear piece by piece, and studied simple paper maps of the training ground that Kim Da had carefully drawn. "They think we're getting rest for tomorrow," Park Min said, grinning as he adjusted the sights on his rifle. "Let them think that," Han replied. His team was used to operating on little sleep. While the Federation troops relied on stimulants and wake aids built into their armor, SEALs had learned to push through exhaustion with pure willpower. Just before Mars' quick sunset ended, Han saw General Tox walking with his officers. They were laughing, probably joking about tomorrow's exercise. The general pointed at the SEALs building, making a gesture that needed no translation. He thought this would be easy. Han turned back to his team. They weren't reviewing combat algorithms or running battle simulations. Instead, they were doing what humans had done before battles for thousands of years, preparing their bodies and minds, checking their weapons, and most importantly, working together. "Tomorrow," Han said simply, "we show them what Earth's warriors can do." His team nodded. They didn't need fancy translators or neural links to understand each other. Years of training together, facing danger together, had given them something technology couldn't match: trust. The Martian dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and orange as both teams gathered at the training ground. The exercise was simple: capture the opponent's flag while defending your own. The Federation had chosen this basic challenge, thinking it would be easy for their advanced soldiers. General Tox stood between the two teams. "The exercise area is 5 square kilometers," he announced. Your flag must be visible from at least one angle. No orbital scanning, no lethal force. Training rounds only. He looked at the SEALs. Though I doubt your weapons could pierce our armor anyway. Han saw Li Jin's slight smile. During the night, they had tested their rounds on a piece of discarded alien armor. The Federation's energy shields were designed to stop energy weapons and high-speed projectiles. But slower, heavier rounds, those got through just fine. The Federation team moved out first, their powered armor letting them cover ground quickly. Their flag went up on top of a hill, protected by energy barriers. Sensors and automated turrets surrounded it. They thought it was in perfect defense. "Ready?" Han asked his team. They nodded. No fancy comm systems, just hand signals and years of training together. Instead of setting up their flag in an obvious defensive position, they did something the aliens didn't expect. They put it in plain sight, in the middle of an open field. "Are they stupid?" One Federation soldier's translator crackled. "That flag is unprotected." Han's team disappeared into the Martian landscape. The red dust that confused alien sensors became their ally. They moved slowly, carefully, just like they had trained thousands of times on Earth. The Federation team split up, most heading for what they thought was an easy capture. Their sensors showed no humans nearby. Their battle computers predicted no resistance. They walked right into the trap. Park Min had buried small charges in the dust, not to hurt anyone, just to create clouds of red powder that filled the air. The Federation soldiers' sensors went crazy, trying to adjust to the sudden dust storm. "My display is malfunctioning," one alien soldier reported, switching to visual mode. But their eyes, used to seeing through advanced heads-up displays, weren't trained for natural vision. The dust made everything look red and hazy. That's when Li Jin started his work. From his hidden position, he fired special rounds that stuck to the aliens' armor joints. No damage, but lots of red dust that clogged their cooling systems. One by one, their powered armor began to overheat. "This is ridiculous," a Federation commander shouted. "They're using the environment against us." Yun Tai and Kang Ho moved through the chaos like shadows. While the aliens were distracted by their malfunctioning gear, the two SEALs slipped past their defenses. The Federation's automated turrets, confused by the dust, didn't even notice them. Kim Da and Han took a different route. They knew the aliens would expect an attack from the ground, so they went up. Using simple climbing gear, ropes and hooks that needed no power, they scaled the back of the hill. The Federation guards never looked up. Their armor told them where to look, and it didn't warn them about two humans climbing without any powered assistance. Within an hour, the exercise was effectively over. Half the Federation team's armor had overheated, forcing them to retreat for repairs. Their sensors were blind, their communications filled with confused chatter. And their flag, it was already in Han's hands. Meanwhile, the Federation soldiers who had gone for the SEALs' unprotected flag found themselves running in circles. Simple tricks, false trails, redirected sensors, and careful use of the terrain kept them away from the real flag's location. General Tox watched through his command display, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. These humans had turned his troops' greatest strengths, their advanced technology and reliance on battle computers, into weaknesses. "Impossible," he muttered. But the proof was right in front of him. A team of humans with primitive weapons had just outmaneuvered the Federation's best soldiers. The exercise wasn't even half over, but the message was clear. Sometimes, the simplest solutions were the most effective. And the most dangerous warriors weren't the ones with the best technology. They were the ones who knew how to think, adapt, and overcome. The Capture the Flag exercise was still going on when the Martian weather changed. Dark clouds rolled in from the east, bringing one of Mars' infamous dust storms. The Federation soldiers didn't worry at first. Their armor was supposed to handle any environment. Warning: atmospheric anomaly detected, the aliens' combat computers announced. Wind speeds were rising faster than expected, and the red dust was getting thicker. Han and his team had just secured their captured flag when they heard the Federation soldiers' worried chatter through Yunta's radio. The aliens' energy shields were flickering as dust particles interfered with their power systems. "Team, gather up," Han called. His voice was calm despite the howling wind. The SEALs had trained in dust storms before, though not on Mars. They knew what to do. That's when the first call for help came through. "This is Unit 7. A Federation soldier's translator crackled. "Armor systems failing. Visual sensors offline. Request immediate extraction." More calls followed. The storm was overwhelming the aliens' sophisticated equipment. Their powered armor, usually a strength, was becoming a prison. Without working sensors, they couldn't even see their own hands in front of their faces. "We need to help them," Kimda said, already checking her medical kit. She knew that if the aliens' armor failed completely, they would be exposed to Mars' thin, cold atmosphere. Han nodded. The exercise didn't matter anymore. Lives were at risk. Li Jin, Park Min, set up guide ropes. Yun Ta, try to get their locations from their distress signals. Kang Ho, you're with me, and Kim Da. The SEALs moved through the storm like they had trained for it their whole lives. They used simple tools, ropes, compasses, and their own senses. No fancy electronics to fail, no powered systems to break down. Kim Da found the first Federation soldier trying to walk against the wind, his armor's joints clogged with dust. She quickly showed him how to clear the vents using a simple brush from her kit. The alien warrior watched in surprise as this primitive tool saved his expensive armor. Li Jin and Park Min strung guide ropes between rocky outcrops, creating safe paths through the storm. They helped Federation soldiers follow these ropes back to safety, teaching them the old human trick of counting steps to keep track of distance. In the thick of the storm, Han and Kang Ho found 3 alien soldiers huddled behind a rock. Their armor was completely dead, and they were starting to panic. The SEALs quickly showed them how to use emergency breathing gear, simple masks and tanks, no electronics needed. "But how can you navigate?" one alien asked through his failing translator. "Your helmets have no advanced systems." "We use our training," Han explained as he led them to safety. "Our bodies, our minds, our experience. Technology helps, but you can't depend on it completely." The storm raged for 2 more hours. During that time, the Federation's advanced combat team had to rely on human methods to survive. They learned to feel the wind's direction, to use touch instead of sensors, to trust their own judgment instead of computers. When the storm finally passed, all soldiers, human and alien, gathered at the base. The Federation troops looked different now. The way they watched the SEALs had changed. There was no more mockery in their eyes, no more jokes about primitive methods. General Tox approached Han's team. For a moment, he stood silent, his translator off. Then he spoke, and his words needed no translation. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that meant the same thing across the galaxy. "Perhaps," he said finally, "there are some things that technology cannot replace, like courage, adaptability, and the wisdom to know when to help your opponents." Kimda was already teaching Federation medics how to handle emergencies without their diagnostic computers. Li Jin showed their marksmen how to judge wind speed by feel. Park Min explained the importance of having backup plans that didn't need power to work. The capture the flag exercise was forgotten, but something more important had been won. The Federation soldiers had learned that being advanced didn't always mean being better. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways, and Earth's warriors had earned their respect not just through strength or skill, but through their willingness to help when it mattered most. Just as everyone thought the worst was over, alarms started blaring throughout the Mars base. Red lights flashed in every corridor, and a computerized voice spoke in both human and alien languages. "Warning. Dome breach detected. Sector 7 integrity compromised. Emergency protocols activated. Han and his team were in the mess hall when it happened. They saw the Federation soldiers rush to their armor stations, but many suits were still damaged from the dust storm. "The dome's crack is growing," General Tox announced. His translator barely heard over the alarms. "Our repair systems are offline from the storm. We have 20 minutes before total dome failure." The Federation soldiers looked lost without their working armor. Their emergency training had always depended on powered suits and advanced tools, but those tools were either broken or wouldn't work fast enough. Han stood up. "How big is the crack?" he asked. 3 meters and spreading," General Tox replied. "Our automated repair drones can't get through the remaining storm interference." Kimda was already pulling emergency patches from her kit. "These are like what we use for underwater hull breaches," she said. "They might work here too." "The pressure difference is too strong," a Federation engineer argued. "No manual patch will hold." "We've dealt with pressure before," Han said calmly. He looked at his team. They had trained for underwater emergencies countless times. Space wasn't that different. It was just pressure going the other way. "Li Jin, Park Min, get every piece of sealant you can find," Han ordered. "Yoon Tai, Kang Ho, we need to rig up safety lines. Kim Da, show their medics how to handle pressure injuries." The Federation soldiers watched in surprise as the SEALs moved with quick, sure actions. There was no panic, no confusion. Each person knew their job. "The crack is in the maintenance sector," General Tox said. "The corridors are narrow. Powered armor can't fit." "We don't need it," Han replied. He and his team were already putting on simple pressure suits, the kind that had been used since the early days of space exploration. When they reached the breach, the situation was worse than expected. The crack was now 4 meters long, and the noise of escaping air was getting louder. The remaining automated systems predicted total failure in 15 minutes. "Like an underwater cave dive," Han told his team as they approached the breach. "Just backwards." They worked like they had trained for this their whole lives. Park Min mixed a special compound that would stick in low pressure. Li Jin's steady hands helped spread it evenly across the crack. Yoon Tai and Kang Ho held support beams in place while the sealant dried. Kim Da directed the Federation medical team, showing them how to spot early signs of pressure sickness without scanners. "Watch their eyes," she explained. "Their skin. Your own senses are better than any machine." The Federation soldiers and engineers started to help, following the SEALs' simple but effective methods. They learned to feel the airflow to find smaller cracks. They made repair patches from basic materials. They worked with their hands instead of waiting for computers to tell them what to do. With 5 minutes left on the countdown, Han pressed the final patch into place. The terrible sound of escaping air stopped. The crack was sealed. "It will hold," Han said, checking the repair one last time. "But you'll want to do a proper fix once your systems are back online." General Tox stared at the repair job. It wasn't pretty. It didn't use any advanced technology, but it worked. "How?" he asked finally. "How did you know what to do?" "Because we train for everything," Han explained. "Not in simulations, not with computers. We train with our bodies and minds until we don't need to think. We just act." The general looked at the sealed crack, then at his own soldiers who were learning to work with their hands for the first time. "I think," he said slowly, "that the Federation has much to learn from Earth after all." The crisis was over, but its impact would last long after the dome was permanently repaired. The Federation soldiers had seen something they never expected: how humans turned their supposed weaknesses, their reliance on physical skills and basic tools, into their greatest strength. The day after the dome crisis, the Federation base on Mars felt different. The alien soldiers no longer walked with the same arrogant stride. Instead, they watched the human SEALs with newfound respect, trying to learn from their every move. Han found General Tox in the command center, studying videos of how the SEALs had handled both the dust storm and the dome breach. The alien commander looked up as Han entered. Lieutenant Han, General Tox said, his translator using a more respectful tone than before. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. Han stood quietly, waiting. He had learned long ago that silence often said more than words. Our best soldiers, General Tox continued, were helpless when their technology failed. But your team, you adapted. You survived. You saved others. He paused. How do you train your warriors? We break them down to build them up, Han explained simply. We teach them to rely on themselves first, their team second, and their equipment last. As if to prove his point, the base alerts suddenly went off again. But this time, it wasn't a real emergency. It was a training exercise. General Tox had ordered it without warning. The Federation soldiers rushed to their armor stations, but this time, they hesitated. They remembered how useless the powered suits had been yesterday. Instead, they watched what the SEALs would do. Han's team moved with calm purpose. Li Jin quickly checked exits and vantage points, a sniper's habit that had saved lives before. Kim Da had her medical kit ready, but she also watched people's faces, reading their reactions like she'd been taught. Yoon Ta listened to the alarm pattern itself, not relying on computer translations. It's a fire alert, he said. Section C. Park Min and Kang Ho were already moving, carrying basic firefighting gear. No powered armor, no advanced suppressants, just tried and true tools that wouldn't fail when needed. The Federation soldiers followed them, learning as they went. They saw how the SEALs communicated with hand signals when the noise was too loud for voices. They noticed how each team member knew their job but could also do anyone else's if needed. When they reached Section C, there was no real fire, just training smoke, but the lesson was clear. The SEALs had responded perfectly without any advanced technology. This is what we mean by being prepared, Han told the watching Federation troops. Technology can fail. Plans can fail. But if you train your body and mind, you'll always have something to rely on. General Tox gathered everyone in the main hall afterward. The Federation soldiers stood mixed with the SEALs now, not separated like before. We came to Earth thinking we were superior, the general admitted. Our technology made us proud, arrogant. We forgot the most important thing about being a warrior. Han nodded. It's not about having the best weapons, he said. It's about having the will to keep going when those weapons fail. Kim Do was already teaching Federation medics how to check vital signs without scanners. Li Jin showed their warriors how to shoot without computer assistance. Park Min demonstrated how to make simple tools work better than complex ones. Your team doesn't just complete missions, General Tox said to Han. They adapt. They improvise. They overcome. He looked at his own soldiers. These are the qualities of true warriors, qualities we have forgotten in our rush to advance. The Federation soldiers were changing. They started asking for physical training alongside their technical drills. They'd wanted to learn Earth's primitive survival skills. They began to understand that being a warrior meant more than wearing powered armor and carrying energy weapons. Perhaps, General Tox said, as he watched a group of his soldiers learning basic hand-to-hand combat from Kang Ho, this is why Earth's special forces are special. Not because of what they have, but because of what they are. Han watched his team teaching and learning alongside the Federation troops. The aliens had advanced technology, but humans had something more valuable. The unbreakable spirit that came from facing challenges with nothing but their wits, their training, and their determination to survive. 1 week after the Dome crisis, a massive Federation command ship arrived at Mars. The ship carried Admiral Vex, the head of all Federation military forces. News of what happened at the training base had reached the highest levels of Federation command. Han and his team stood at attention as the Admiral walked into the base's main hall. The huge alien commander towered over everyone, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the lights. I did not believe the reports at first, Admiral Vex said, his translator set to a formal tone. Our best soldiers outmaneuvered by humans, the primitive Earth team teaching our warriors new ways to fight. It seemed impossible. The Admiral walked slowly past the seals, studying each of them. He stopped in front of Han. "Then I saw the videos," he continued. "The dust storm, the dome breach, the training exercises afterward." He turned to face everyone in the hall. "I saw Federation soldiers learning to rely on themselves instead of their technology. I saw what true warriors could do with simple tools and proper training." General Tox stepped forward. "Admiral, I recommend we change our approach to military training. The Earth methods." "Yes," Admiral Vex interrupted. "The Earth methods work. They have proven this." He looked at Han's team again. "Which is why I am here." The Admiral pressed a button on his armor. A holographic display appeared, showing the Federation's military academy on their home world. "We want to create a new training program," he announced. "One that combines Federation technology with Earth's Special Forces methods. And we want your team, Lieutenant Han, to help design it." Han looked at his team. They had come to Mars expecting a simple exercise. Instead, they had changed how the most powerful military force in the galaxy thought about warfare. "The Federation offers Earth a full military partnership," Admiral Vex continued. "Not as protectors, but as equals. Your warriors have earned this right." Kim Da raised her hand politely. When the Admiral nodded, she spoke. "Will we be teaching emergency medical care too? Many lives could be saved if medics knew how to work without advanced equipment." "You will teach everything," Admiral Vex replied. "Combat skills, survival methods, medical care, adaptation, improvisation. Our warriors must learn to be strong even when their technology fails." Li Jin spoke next, his quiet voice carrying in the silent hall. "And will Federation soldiers learn to shoot without computer assistance?" "They will learn everything you can teach them," the Admiral confirmed. "And perhaps you will learn some things from us as well. A warrior who can use both old and new ways is stronger than one who knows only one path." The Admiral's words made Han think. The Federation had the most advanced technology in the galaxy. If their soldiers could combine that with human adaptability and training. "We accept," Han said simply. Admiral Vex nodded with approval. "Then it is decided." He turned to the Federation soldiers in the room. "From this day forward, all Federation warriors will train in both ways, with technology and without it. We will learn from Earth's Special Forces, and they will learn from us." The ceremony that followed was simple but meaningful. Each member of Han's team received a Federation combat honor, not for defeating the alien soldiers, but for saving them and teaching them. As Kim Da received her medal, a Federation medic she had taught stepped forward. "Thank you," he said in rough English, having turned off his translator. "You showed us that healing comes from the healer, not the tools." Li Jin's award was presented by a Federation sniper who had learned to shoot without computer aid. "Now I understand," the alien warrior said. "The best shot comes from the shooter's skill, not the weapon systems." The other team members received similar honors. Yoon Ta for teaching communications without advanced tech. Park Min for showing how simple solutions often worked best. Kang Ho for demonstrating the importance of physical training. Finally, Admiral Vex himself presented Han's award. "You have taught us the most important lesson of all," the Admiral said. "A true warrior's greatest weapon is not the technology they carry, but the spirit they possess." The Federation's respect had been earned not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the timeless qualities that made Earth's Special Forces truly special: courage, adaptability, and the unwavering will to overcome any challenge. 6 months after the events on Mars, the Federation's main military academy looked very different. On a large training field, Federation cadets ran obstacle courses without their powered armor. In combat rooms, they practiced shooting without computer assistance. In medical bays, they learned to treat injuries using basic tools. Han watched from a viewing platform as Kim Da taught a class of alien medics. She was showing them how to stitch wounds by hand, something that would have seemed primitive to them half a year ago. Now they practiced with complete focus, understanding that these skills could save lives when technology failed. Their progress is impressive, General Tox said, standing beside Han. The general had become the strongest supporter of the new training program. They're becoming true warriors, not just technology operators. In another area, Li Jin worked with Federation snipers. They had put away their energy rifles for the day, learning instead to use simple projectile weapons. The aliens were amazed at how accurate they could be without computer targeting. "Watch the wind," Li Jin told them. "Feel it on your skin. Let your body become part of the environment." The Federation soldiers nodded, finally understanding that natural skill could match artificial assistance. Park Min and Kang Ho ran hand-to-hand combat training nearby. The Federation soldiers, once dependent on powered armor, now moved with their own strength and skill. They had learned that their bodies, properly trained, could be more reliable than any machine. Yun Ta had revolutionized their communications training. "Technology can fail," he explained to his class. "But if you train your eyes, ears, and mind, you'll always be able to communicate." The Federation soldiers practiced hand signals and learned to read the environment for information. The changes went beyond just training. Federation ship designs now included backup systems that could be operated manually. Their armor had simple mechanical overrides. Even their weapons could switch to basic mode when needed. "We're creating a new kind of warrior," Admiral Vex said as he toured the facility. "One who can fight with technology or without it. One who thinks before relying on computers. One who understands that the greatest weapon is the warrior itself." Han's team had grown too. They learned to use Federation technology, but in their own way. They didn't depend on it. They just added it to their existing skills. Kim Da learned alien medical techniques, but combined them with human intuition. Li Jin mastered energy weapons while keeping his skill with traditional rifles. In the main training hall, a new motto had been carved in both human and Federation languages. "Technology empowers, but spirit prevails." A group of new cadets arrived at the academy, both human and alien. They would be the first class to train in both ways from the start. Han addressed them on their first day. "Look around you," he said, while General Tox translated. "Humans and Federation soldiers training together, learning from each other. Some of you might think one way is better than the other, but true strength comes from knowing both." He pointed to the training fields where Federation soldiers ran without armor, then to the advanced simulation rooms where humans learned to use alien technology. "You will learn to fight with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy," Han continued, "but you'll also learn to fight without them. You'll learn to use technology, but never depend on it. You'll become warriors who can adapt to any situation." The new cadets, human and alien alike, stood straighter at his words. They understood they were part of something new, a combination of the Federation's advanced technology and humanity's unbreakable spirit. Later that day, Han watched the sunset with his team. The sky was different on this alien world, but they had made it feel like home. "Did you ever think," Kim Da asked, "that coming to teach the Federation about our primitive ways would change the galaxy?" Han smiled. "We didn't change the galaxy," he said. "We just reminded them of something they had forgotten, that the strongest warriors aren't the ones with the best technology. They're the ones who never stop adapting, never stop learning, and never give up." As night fell, lights came on across the academy. In one direction, Federation soldiers practiced with simple tools. In another, humans trained with advanced technology. But they were no longer separate groups. They were all warriors, learning to be strong in every way possible. The Federation had learned respect for Earth's special forces. But more importantly, they had learned that true strength comes not from what you have, but from who you are.